And now I'm very excited to welcome back to the show an NFL and football contest champion and sports betting guru and Mr. Las Vegas Cris. You can follow him on Twitter at Las Vegas Cris. Cris, thanks for coming back on the show, my man. There's contests going on. You got some new stuff going on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, happy to be back. I can't wait till the season starts so I can slow down. Just a lot of new stuff. I'm doing 2 shows a week over at BetUS. We're doing a Tuesday show with opening lines, look back at the previous week, and then a Friday morning show looking at the weekend's games and such with Scott Kellen and Matt Landis, 2 great guys. And the content's getting better and better. I'm not a media guy. I'm a bettor, so it's a little choppy here and there. And tomorrow is going to be the first episode over at Covers every Thursday, 10 a.m. with Adam Chernoff. And we're going to talk contests. We're going to take a look at the opening line or the contest lines, and we're going to try to figure out what the public is going to be on, which is a very valuable tool for people. It's going to be difficult on a Thursday, but a lot of people want to know that information. So we're going to take a stab at trying to come to an agreement on what the 5 common plays are going to be.
I think it's a great idea. It's harder to guess what the public's going to be on for me than the actual lines themselves. You know, I think the lines you can go by power ratings. You can go by some public power ratings, and you're not that far off. Even when I go by my own power ratings, I'm not that far off because they're pretty similar. It's an efficient market, but guessing the public dog is going to be interesting because you have to think that the public always thinks that they're smarter than everybody else sometimes, and so they're going to probably find a dog that just looks really bad, but the other side might even be the right side. Who knows? So I can see a little challenge in that.
Well, I can tell you it's a challenge. I absolutely needed to know what they were going to be picking. It was somewhere around week 14, 15 last year in circa. And I remember going, okay, I definitely, because I don't do it every week. I mean, contest strategy isn't every week. Most of the time I don't care what the public's going to be on. But there's certain times, if you're coming from behind or something, you have to make it your consideration. So I remember saying, okay, and I was confident. I'm like, okay, I think that the most I'm only going to match 1, and the consensus plays come out, and I'm on 4 out of 5, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So very, very disappointing. But the consensus had gone 1 and 9 the 2 previous weeks. So I thought to myself, you know what? If I'm going to be on with the consensus, it's after they've gone 1 and 9 because the consensus doesn't do that badly. So in case anybody wants to know, the consensuses are just a little bit profitable in that range. The best tracking consensus was the Super Contest Gold. They had the best record, in case anybody's curious.
Yeah, the Gold definitely a larger entry fee by 5 times. It's $5,000 to get in the Gold, which means you're going to get a little bit sharper of players in that. So that's the reason why their consensus is probably a little bit sharper of a play. And I totally agree with that. So if there's a way you could predict the consensus for the Gold, you might do pretty well in the contest yourself just by playing that. But I don't think not sure if it's going to win it. But
no, it's never good enough. It wouldn't even get you remotely close to getting in the money. But you can't fade it either. You can't fade either consensus. So it's just information.
Yep, information, and it's great information because you don't always want to be fading a sharper side. So great stuff there. But it is contest season. Thanks for bringing that up. And I've entered in a few of them myself. Can you tell us which contests that you're going to partake in, or do you know that at this point? Because there is like 3 or 4 days left.
Well, I did the last man standing here locally. I like that because it's against the line, and it's basically 1 loss and you're out. And against the point spread. So I've won that 1 year. I've gone out the last day twice and made a lot of money on those hedges. So I either get knocked out early or I end up being late in those, and it's just fun. It's cheap. It's only 5 entries for $100. So anybody living in the Vegas area should be getting in that. It's fun, and I'll do Circa Millions again, and I guess I will do Survivor, and I will do Super Contest because there's no commission on it. They're not taking a fee out, so I didn't do it for a while. And I might do or the Gold. I don't know. And I'm thinking about William Hill just because there's not a lot of people in it, but I really didn't want to do it. So it depends on how much time and energy I have to run around to get in.
Oh yeah, for sure. A lot of options for you. I did William Hill. There's only, well, Maddie just texted me 300 entries, I believe, in this thing, and the overlay is $1 million. So it's $1 million. So that means the overlay 700,000.
Yeah, right? There was only 195 yesterday.
Oh no, sorry. I was wrong. 200. So only 5 came in since you said that. Thanks for correcting me. There's 200 in, which means there's an $800,000 overlay here. I mean, 5. That's massive. Only 1/5 of the entries are in.
Well, I think that they'll finish at like 400 somehow.
I would guess, but man, you would think it would have drummed up some more stuff over Labor Day weekend here.
Well, they should have done NFL, not college, and they should have. And you have to go to one of the properties, and a lot of people don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, well, that's true. So I do like college, so I'm really glad that I'm getting into this one personally. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for that one right now. And they're probably sweating a little bit over there. There's been some position changes recently at the William Hill. And I wonder if it had anything to do with this guaranteed contest that's not going to give them a return on investment. That is interesting.
I don't think so. But they're changing their philosophy from, as we all know, they kind of got a bad rap for not taking sharp action. And, the word on the street is they're letting people back in. They're taking bigger bets, and their risk management company that they have an agreement with basically is advising fire away, take all comers. And their goal is to have as many offerings as possible. So, they already have a pretty nice offering base of, a lot of everything. So, the fact that they just want to add to it and expand their in-game and expand how much they're willing to take, that's a good thing if it actually comes to fruition, because William Hill was bought. So it's not the old William Hill running things anymore. So
right.
Hopefully it's good things.
Yeah, hopefully it's good things. And we'll see how many people get into this baby. Let's get into some NFL then, Chris. What's more important in the NFL in general? Is it, and this is kind of like just a question. It's not rhetorical necessarily, but it's just an opinionated question. There's no right or wrong answer here. But I just want to get a feeling from somebody that wins a lot of contests, somebody that places highly in contests. Is it talent that really moves the needle, or is it coaching more that moves the needle? We know they both do. So an example that I can give you is, like, say the Houston Texans roster of this year. Say their coach was Bill Belichick, and then compare them to the Cleveland Browns roster right now with a coach like Anthony Lynn. Maybe who wins that game? Or how do you judge each one?
Well, as a Lions fan, we have Anthony Lynn as the offensive coordinator. We have Dan Campbell. Everybody's making fun of him, but the spirits haven't been as high as they are in a while in Detroit. The players love these guys. I don't remember the defensive line coach, but he's one of these rah-rah guys that really inspires a lot of effort. Also, I mean, Campbell's out there doing the drills with them. He's doing the push-ups. He's participating in a lot of these activities, and that garners a lot of respect. And guys like that can get maximum effort. It's a matter of whether they have any talent or not. He fouled up the end of a game in preseason, and he said, well, yeah, I don't care whether we win or lose the game. I wanted to test my quarterback in the situation. So he's got a point there, but As far as, I mean, coaching goes a long way. I mean, players' performances are inconsistent from week to week. Injuries happen, but coaching in general is pretty consistent. I mean, you could always count on Lynn to screw up the end of a game, and Belichick is always going to be strong against young quarterbacks, and Reed's going to be great off the bye, and he's going to have his offense firing on all cylinders. There's certain consistencies from the coaches that you don't see in the players. So you and I can't answer that question. It's matchup to matchup, week to week, and what do we really know?
Exactly. And I think you answered it well enough, because you put some points out on belief in the players. Players can play out of their ability sometimes when they have great motivators. And I use Anthony Lynn as a bad coach example, but you just told me that they like him over there as a coordinator. So maybe bad example. Maybe I should have used a Bill O'Brien or something. But I think what you're saying is great coaching goes a massive long way. And obviously talent kind of takes you over the top is what I'm thinking. I mean, looking at what Belichick did last year, Chris, I don't even think that team should have got 7 wins. I think that team should have been a lot worse than they were.
Yeah, they were a frustrating team. I recently went through my entire history of betting, and I charted everything out by week and actually by team, just to really dissect places where I'm bleeding, so to speak. But New England's not a team that I did well with last year. I was 2-4, and I actually have a losing record over the last 6 years. One of the few teams I have a losing record betting their games. So there's something that they do that messes up my metrics. They do something well that overvalues them, I think, sometimes.
Oh, they screwed me for years, man. There's been lines that made no sense, and I've been fading New England past 6-7 years and getting beat by them. So sometimes you get teams like that, and a lot of people attest that to Belichick's coaching. So, great point on that. It's not a perfect system, but we try to find our best little, nooks and crannies to try to beat these lines. And in every single line, we study them every single week, and nobody better at than you yourself. And I know this because we've talked a lot, and I see you in action. It's fantastic. But I do want to ask a question about what you did over the summer. You did kind of tease us a little bit. You said that you compiled a lot of your NFL results from the last 5 or 6 years. And you told me a little bit about what you're trying to accomplish, but why don't you tell the audience, what were you looking for for a future success? Was it patterns in your play to not make mistakes? Was it uncommon situations that you might find that could help you win or be profitable in the future? What was all the reasoning for compiling every single bit of your information?
Well, nobody wants to do it, but record keeping is extremely important. And quite honestly, if my plays hadn't been tracked over at Wager Talk, I wouldn't have a complete record of my plays. Unfortunately, they are tracked, and so now I can track them myself also. But there's such a fine line during football season. 1 or 2 plays makes all the freaking difference in the world. I'm willing to work weeks and weeks and weeks to try to save 1 or 2 losses or try to get 1 or 2 wins. And it not only applies to the betting, it applies to the contest. If I'm using multiple entries in the contest and I'm averaging having to come up with 7 plays per week, it's a little harder for me to filter. So, but there are some weeks when I have 10 possible plays and I've got to filter down. So I want to see, okay, where am I bleeding, or where do I really excel? There has to be something in my past history, and there is. There's definitely, certain teams that have just crushed me every year for some reason. I don't mean crush, but the Raiders games, I'm 35% on lifetime, 20 games. So I want to kind of stay away from Raider games if I start off bad again this year, having to play them. There's other teams where I'm just gold. Atlanta, I'm like 72% on their games, 28 and 11. So if my charts are, what it has to do with is being able to see if I'm doing well betting on teams or against teams. So that's something you can track, is because I have completely different records betting against certain teams versus betting on certain teams. And that's going to tell me where weakness is in my model. And then if I'm matching up two teams that, like my two best teams are, I don't have it in order, but if I'm matching up two of my top teams, boy, I'm going to trust those metrics. If I've got games that says that I'm involved in, something that contradicts my former history, well, then I'm going to, kind of leave that on the back burner, that type of stuff. There's home and road records. There's, favored and underdog records. There's over this point spread records. There's all kinds of ways to dissect it that is of value, that when you're trying to figure it out and eliminate teams, hey, that might be the deciding factor.
No, that's great. That's a great way to answer it, because you're trying to find the angles that you were good at on a team and the angles that you were bad at on a team. Makes total sense to me, because once you said the Raiders there, I think I cringed a little bit and maybe even threw up in my mouth, because I'm pretty sure that I haven't had that good of a record with John Gruden myself over the years. Very unpredictable coach, but he's hit. There's probably something about him that is a buy point that I can't come up with right now, and maybe people like you that compile their data well will find some of that information. So that's great stuff. All the work that you put in. By the way, what's that background that you have right there? Are you in the jungle right now, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, I'm on vacation. I usually go away for summers, and since I've been unable to, I'll live on vacation on my green screen.
Yeah,
it's actually Laos.
Is it Laos? Looks like Jungle Cruise, the movie I just watched. Made my kids watch and scared the hell out of them. But it looks like a nice place to be, and makes me want to go swimming, my man. Sit in the jungle a little bit. You
don't want to go swimming in that river, but it is one of the most beautiful places. It's one of the most beautiful places you could go. Just beautiful.
I'll go fishing in it instead then. Let's move on to the next question. So, what's the best approach to picking 5 NFL games? And I guess not the best, but what are some of the great approaches? And we touched on this a little bit last time. But for example, a lot of people will look at a contest line that comes out on a Wednesday, and the line's pretty stale then. But then all of a sudden there's movement afterwards. Maybe it's -3.5 to -5.5. Does that make you put a larger weight on that game if you're kind of leaning that anyway? Or is there other tells in this whole contest picking strategy, similar, like the public percentage is high, but the line didn't move? Maybe you want to go the other way. Are those some elements that you use?
Well, I don't pay attention to public percentages much. I think there's, a dozen reasons why percentages are somewhat meaningless for the most part. So that doesn't come into play too much. But when I see, like in Survivor, for example, when you see big spread games, they're doing you a favor, because you're like, okay, good. Everybody's going to be on that game and I'm not. So because your goal, you can't win if you're on the same game as everybody else. So you're looking, you need to be on a different game. With the pick 5 format, when I see lines that go off by a couple of points, I'm hoping that I don't have to be on that game. Now, it's not like Survivor where I have to avoid the game. Because oftentimes I will be on that big move game if I was going to be on it already.
Okay.
But I'm not going to go out of my way to get on line move games, because it's not going to give me the opportunity to gain ground, or it gives me the opportunity to gain ground on a fewer number of people. So I really don't want to be on those games if I can avoid it, but it's not a hard, fast rule.
Oh, so even if the line moves away, you're not necessarily going to go on that game because a lot of other people are playing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to be, and especially like in a last man standing contest, I do go out of my way in last man standing contests, because those are shorter and there's fewer people, and it's point spread related. So you definitely want to be on games that the public is not going to be on. So I rarely am on the big line move game in a point spread eliminator.
Oh, wow. Okay. So even though it sometimes tells you that there's a side that might be a little bit sharper if there's a line move, it's something that a lot of people be on. That's the difference between some contest strategy and some actual strategy. I almost think. Yeah, that's good stuff there, man. Well, great. Thanks for all that information here. Let's get into a little bit of NFL Week 1 then. And before we get into some games, I have some interesting trends and system information that I got together with Kyle Hunter on. And I thought it was pretty interesting because, all the shows that I listen to, they're all saying, don't take big favorites, don't take big favorites. And I wanted to find out what the information really was. So just with Kyle, I went back 5 years because there's been some rule change, extra point changes and things like that. So I thought it'd be good to go back 5 years to find out what favorites of -7.5 or more have done against the spread in general.
Pretty good.
Yeah. And what we found was it was 143, 146, and 3. Not a huge difference there. And this is back 5 years, all spreads 7.5 or larger. Okay.
Did you break that out by year though? Isn't it been better the last 1 or 2 years?
It has been actually, but I have to go back to the data. But the important thing about what this week is that we're curious about what happened week 1. So week 1 over the past 5 years, there's not many of them. There's only 3 of them this week. We're looking at favorites 7.5 or more went 3-7. So if you bet on a big favorite, like the Cowboys, or sorry, like the Tampa Bay Bucks, like the Rams, and like the San Francisco 49ers, just over the past 5 years is 3-7. So not a huge sample size, but we went back 10 years, Chris, and it is actually 7-15. Like a little over 70% to the dog there, or sorry, a little over 66% to the dog. And if you look at -8 or more the first week, it's 4-14. So betting on games that have those big Tampa Bay spreads, those big San Fran spreads at Detroit, and you made some great points about Detroit, and the LA Rams hosting the Bears where they don't have the greatest home field advantage, have been bad bets over the past 10 years. So I find that kind of interesting, my man.
You've got to be Looney Tunes as far as I'm concerned to be laying big numbers, because I don't care what you think you know. I don't care how many podcasts you listen to, how many prognosticators. Nobody knows squat, because by the end of week 2 and 3, there's going to be people pissing and moaning and panicking and overreacting to what they've seen already. And by the time playoff season hits, every single year has, a fair amount of teams that were not expected to be in the playoffs that made the playoffs. And it's the same thing, wash, rinse, repeat. Every year, it's the same thing. So expect the unexpected, and don't think you know anything, because you look at San Francisco last year. I mean, from Super Bowl to that nonsense, you don't know what's going to happen with injuries, COVID, or any of this stuff. There's too much unpredictability.
I think the worst one is San Fran here at -7.5, because you made some great points about Detroit, but I also got to think that Jared Goff knows a little bit about Kyle Shanahan playing the last couple of years. And you also got to think that he's kind of got a chip on his shoulder a little bit, and he's going to want to perform very well the first week. While San Fran, they have two quarterbacks, right? Jimmy Garoppolo can't be happy with Trey Lance there. He can't be. I mean, he's kind of getting his butt kicked out. You wonder how that affects his psyche that first game. And let's just say they throw Lance in, he can get the yips or the jitters. This is his first NFL game. So that's the only point I want to make. I didn't say I bet the Lions here, and I'm not saying I'm not going to bet them. I just think it's kind of interesting.
Well, it always seems like everybody needs a quarterback, but if you go up and down this entire league, we've never had so many good quarterbacks, because the game has changed and the style of the game has changed. And we're going to get to an 18th game soon. Quarterbacks can't last 17 weeks. It's going to become a platoon situation within the next few years with quarterbacks, and it's going to be standard. You've got a backup is going to be a very important role for teams, and they better get used to it now. They better get used to coexisting and looking at it as a team concept, so to speak. Why does it have to be one or the other? Because it in a few years, it's not going to be one or the other. It's going to be, do you have two quarterbacks that can last 18 games?
Right. Because you're going to be fortunate the way the game's changed with quarterbacks running the ball a lot. Lamar Jackson's out there. You have to be prepared for them to be injured. I mean, Mahomes was battered up last year. It's going to happen. It's going to happen to everybody. And they're going to try to protect the quarterback, but it's never that good of a look when they just keep throwing those flags. And I think it really hurts the viewership when that happens as well. So great points on that. And, just kind of going into this is the first NFL week, and people shouldn't get overzealous here. Hell, if I could not have to pick 5 picks in the circa, I wouldn't. I would love to just have to pick one the first week, but that's not the rules. But, the way I'm looking at this is if I had to do something, I don't think I'm going to be betting on any new coaches. I think if you had to bet, maybe going against these new coaches is interesting because they didn't have the number of OTAs as they've had in the past. These players are getting new playbooks coming in, and the preseason was cut down to 3 games, So it's just an angle I'm thinking about, Chris. But I'm not sure what your perspective on some of the new coaches. Unfortunately, in 2 games, 2 new coaches play each other. The Jets, or not the Jets, the Philadelphia and Atlanta is one of them, and Houston and Jacksonville. So unfortunately, you get no angle with that there, Chris.
Well, you got to remember also you've got twice as many coaches, twice as many players playing preseason for the first time. And then you've got the fans. I want to see how these players react in front of fans. There's a lot of variables this year that have me uneasy. Last year I went in extremely confident. It was the first time I ever changed my name in the contest because I just felt it. I go, you know what? I know I'm going to do well this year. I don't want any distractions up at the top if I'm up there. And sure enough, I did well. This year, I'm not as confident because I don't know all the variables with the fans. Are the refs going to call plays again? The penalties enforcement last year was down huge. It was a huge drop. They just stopped calling stuff. And, are they going to, regress back to the way penalties were previous, or is this going to be the way it goes from now on? How are the fans going to affect all these players that had monster years? Because Josh Allen was a bottom tier quarterback the year before. They gave him $250 million, and now he's playing in front of fans again. Is he going to play differently? We don't know. So that's what's going on in my mind is that anything's possible. Have an open mind about it and be aware of all these extracurricular things that you're not considering.
Yeah, 100%. So much coming at us this year, and there's so many intricacies, let's just say, within these teams and within all the changes that have been made. And you can follow Chris at Las Vegas Chris or at Vegas Synergy on Twitter. Let's get into the Thursday night game a little bit here. And it's a big spread. It's one of the ones that I mentioned before. You have the Tampa Bay Bucks, Super Bowl champions, -8 points now. And this thing was -6.5 a month ago. The total is about 51.5, Chris. I know this is, I can almost guarantee you're not playing this game, at least from a contest perspective, but do you have any thoughts on this line?
Yeah, it's up to 8.5. It'll probably go higher. I'm hearing that Dallas is a mess. They've got a lot of problems that aren't known. I mean, it's not going to, make them crash and burn, but they just have a lot of this and that disorganizations and inconsistencies and that I think are not good signs for that team. But going into the playoffs last year, I had Tampa as only the number 7 best team. And I still had bet them to win the Super Bowl, when they faced off, against Kansas City. So my ratings aren't insane. So they were not like the juggernaut that they were in the playoffs. They were fortunate enough to be plus 10 turnovers over those few games. That's ridiculous. Plus 10. It's hard to not lose games. They were 69% pass defense. very, very mediocre during the regular season. And then all of a sudden they're down into the 50s. You have to be careful with Tampa Bay and having some recency bias of what we saw during that great run. And Brady's a year older. They're bringing back all 22 starters, which are a year older. They already have the trophy. They already have the confidence. Are they going to be focused? Because we know there used to be previous trends that the Super Bowl winning team would come in flat. So that's not uncommon. So I kind of question, when I look at their schedule, I don't know how they're not going to win 14, 15 games. I mean, they have one of the easiest schedules, then they know it. So with all those factors, I'm just curious how motivated they come in. It's game one. We assume they're going to come in strong and motivated. I use them in a teaser. I don't bet a lot of teasers, but that was the only way that I just can't see them losing to Dallas. I really can't, but it's not going to shock me, but I'm not going to, like, as you mentioned, I'm not laying over a touchdown on week one with anybody.
For sure. And yeah, it's hard to do. And that spread keeps going up, and it's turned into a big public side, I think. And there's been a sharp side too. I took Tampa Bay 6.5 a month and a half ago. And I just kind of thought this line move was going to happen. But what helped me is Dak not playing in the preseason. And what helped me, because this is before the preseason when I took this, and what also helped me was McCarthy looking terrible and lost as well. Now they have some offensive line problems with Zach Martin's got COVID. A couple of their depth guys have a little injury. So this is why this line keeps going up. But it's a fantastic teaser candidate until the 8.5. So if you haven't taken it yet, once it gets to 9, the move is only 3. I took it in a teaser already, and I'm going to go over that at the end of my show. But I'm glad that you mentioned the Super Bowl champion thing, because I wrote this down to say, I said, if you asked me 5 years ago, I would never want to back the Super Bowl team. But lately, the last 3-4 years, the Super Bowl team has been stepping it up week one a little bit. Maybe I know there was a lucky one, and I was on that. It was when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Atlanta kept blowing it in the red zone. So I remember that year perfectly and where I was watching that game. But at the same time, Kansas City took care of business. And it looks like the Super Bowl team has been doing that. So I wonder if that's going to change anything, if they kind of want to make that statement now. Being Dallas is such a mess, the only way I can get involved at this number is a teaser. And I think it's a pretty good teaser because you know what? It sets your week up really nicely. If you have that other leg to wait for, you got half of it done. It's a Thursday game, and it's just going to be hard for me to see Tampa losing outright, but I can see a lot of ways the back door can happen, and that's why these -8s lose a lot, Chris.
But yeah, it's no team winning or losing is going to surprise me week one. So, and that's the bottom line. Any one of these teams can win, and we see these. Let's not forget Indianapolis, Jacksonville last year. I forget what that spread was, but it was double digits, I believe, wasn't it?
It was at least 7.5. I was actually one of the few people on Indy that week. And the reason it was is because their last 5 times, Jacksonville's covered the spread at home on that game. But I was on an island because everyone else was, I'm not saying all the sharp bettors were on Jacksonville, but there's a lot of people or on Indy in Jacksonville. There's a lot of people on Indy. So I was fortunate to get that one. But it was the biggest survivor loss in the first week of the season in a very long time. It was last week because of perception. So just like Chris said, when you're betting these spreads, remember Indy and Jacksonville. Great advice there, because Indy with Rivers was like a Super Bowl, like look ahead team. So interesting stuff there. Let's move on to one more game then. And Denver is playing the New York Giants. And this spread was at 1.5 for a while. Now it's all the way up to 3, a road favorite in Denver with a total of 42. And let me start this one, if that's okay. Looking at this total, I don't know if I've ever bet a road favorite with a total of 42 in this position, man, especially if 3. Now, I think the Broncos hype started in the preseason because they blew away Minnesota and they blew away one other team, and they look good doing it. But what I saw with Minnesota is a bunch of guys that don't play a lot. And when Mon had to play that game because their quarterback was out, and Mon only practiced 2 or 3 times, so they got smoked. Now all this money's coming in on Denver, and people are starting to say it's Fangio's year and things like that, but I'm not seeing it like this, man. And my actual number, Chris, is the Giants -1.5. Now, I do have an issue with the Giants because I don't think they did anything with their offensive line in the preseason, in the free agency, as well as the NFL draft. I don't think they addressed it well at all. But at the same time, what has Denver done to deserve to go on the road to this team and lay 3 points? So I think it's disrespectful. And I think that, Danny Dimes could come up with a pretty good game here if he can get rid of the ball and just not get slammed. Now, I didn't play this game, but I'll tell you right now, if this gets into a 3.5, I'm going to be forced to play the Giants.
Well, Denver may very well win this game, but, you can't be laying 3 when the thing's been sitting there, pick 1.5 forever. Giants do have a couple of injury, issues going on that have affected the line a little bit. And Bridgewater is a choice for quarterback, probably prevents them from the careless errors that Locke was getting them into. And
right.
He's like the tortoise, the steady Eddie type of guy. And bettors seem to like that. When I glance at that line, I think it's nuts. I mean, if you're going to get yourself into laying 3 on the road in this type of situation on a regular basis, I don't think that thought process is going to work over time. I mean, it's just one game, of course, but I could only bet this game one direction for sure. But unlike you, I respect Denver quite a bit. I think, they were missing their best player on the offense and their best player on the defense, plus a variety of other issues. They went 4 or 5 quarterbacks deep at one point. They had a lot of issues. Their defense is pretty darn good. Denver was in games the entire season, and they had no reason to play. I mean, when you really, they were out of it. I mean, when they lost their 2 best players, they were out of it. What was the point of them even playing? They could have just packed it in, but they had a lot of tight games, throughout the season, and they were just sort of like a thorn in your side that you had to be, you couldn't just cast aside as, oh, well, they won't show up. They showed up a lot of time. A lot of I don't remember how many 1-score games they had, but it had, I'm guessing it was a lot.
Yeah, I'm guessing it was a lot too. And I know Locke kind of came back in some of those games with Denver, but I'm thinking Bridgewater with Carolina was a lot different looking than he was as a backup to Breeze, because everyone liked Bridgewater for what he did with Breeze, because the line over-adjusted with the difference between Breeze and Bridgewater, but it was all Sean Payton, and Sean Payton drew up great stuff for Bridgewater when he was his backup, and that's why he got that starting job, but he just got kicked out of Carolina. Some quarterbacks are different when they're not in a position that I'm the backup, I'm waiting for the guy to get healthy, rather than, hey, I'm the guy, it's all the pressure on me right now. Yes, there's no way I could lay it with Denver at this price.
You look at a team like that, and they're in 10, a team in that dire straits, they're in 10 1-score games. That's one of the highest amount of 1-score games in the league. That's something impressive. If they could correct that turnover, they were -16 in the turnover margin. They could rope that in. There's a lot of little things that they could improve on that make a huge difference, that turn those 1-score games into wins very easily, getting these returning players back and adding from the draft.
Yeah, we'll see. And if they're going to be in another 1-score game, I would certainly rather have points than be laying them with this Denver Broncos team. But great point.
They could start off, they should be very optimistic, because they could start off 3-0. I mean, don't be surprised if Denver starts off 3-0. And now we're talking about a different story.
They do have the easiest schedule from a Vegas win total perspective this year. And so that And I was thinking about taking the Chargers to make the playoffs, or they're over their win total, but I shied off it just because of Denver's easier schedule and the fact that they did look pretty good in preseason, even though I bashed them a little bit. But we'll see what happens. I don't like betting on new coaches, like I said before, and that was the third reason why I stayed off the Chargers. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Denver went 3-4-0 here, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens to Fangio, because Fangio's on the hot seat this year. He's got to keep his job. He's going to have to make the playoffs to do it. Just here that you'd like to throw out there.
Oh no, I got nothing. I don't know. I just want the season to start. This has just been brutal. Just months of this, and believe it or not, the season will slow down. Everything will slow down once some consistency starts, and that's what I recommend to everybody, is just getting their habits on straight and not digging themselves into a whole week 1 or 2 or 3. And remember, 33 to 40% of people have lost their bankrolls by the second week of October. So don't be one of those people. It's a long year, plenty of games ahead of us.
You could be just as happy being 3-0 as you would 8-0, but you're taking a hell of a lot larger risk if you think you're going to try to bet 8 games. So that's a very good point there. Don't over exhaust yourself on some of these changes here. Great stuff, Cris. Where can our listeners find your great information in place for this year?
Well, you can find me on VegasSynergy.com or Vegas Synergy on Twitter, and Las Vegas Cris. And as I mentioned, I've got a YouTube page. You could search under Las Vegas Cris also. And there's lots of good content on there.
Yes, make sure you check out Chris's YouTube page as well, because he's going to start growing that as he grows and his season grows throughout the year. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast, Cris. I can't wait to hear some of your insights in your other shows, but I'll be texting you as usual on a daily basis.
Sounds good, buddy.